Alright, I think we're good. And we are live on the what is it? The 6950 XT. We do an audio test. And we are live. Okay, we're good there. Let's move this over a bit. Okay. And if I wanted to show this, all right. I think we're good. Now I'm just gonna wait for people to show up, and then we will start discussing the reviews that have gone live for the 7900 XTX and the 7900 XT. Let me see how long I gotta wait. Still a while for now. Okay, so the stream, we are streaming at 1080p 60 FPS using the 6950 XT's AMF encoder for those curious. And we have one viewer, although I think that might be me. Let me pause my playback. I don't need to be playing back the video. And we'll test some other games too in a little bit. I want to get all this stuff out of the way. Let's see, we got 2 viewers. So we will talk about the reviews. I want to make sure that my live chat is working. Let me do a test real quick. Should see it, I hope. How quick was that? I'm not seeing it on here. Let me see, views 4. I can't see the chat. Where's my chat? Oh, there. That's really delayed. Why is that so delayed? That's really delayed. I don't know why that's delaying so much. That test came in super late. Let me make sure that... I think the settings shouldn't be any different. The reason why we're having to do this, for those wondering why, I am streaming from a different computer. I am streaming from the 13900K CPU build that I did last month, or was it almost 2 months ago now? Yeah, it was October when that product launched. So we're trying to see the stream's current bitrate is higher than the recommended. Well, if it's laggy, let me know in the chat. I want to see how it looks, although I need to do some little fine adjustments on the stream. Like the chat window is like too high up or too low or something like that. I gotta change that. We'll see. We'll just see how it goes. But man, that was really... Maybe I should put ultra low latency, but I think the thing is really slow. So we'll see what's going on there. Anyway, let's get this stuff out of the way while we're waiting for people to join into the chat, and then we'll go from there. We'll talk about the reviews. We'll talk all about what the various review outlets have gone over. And we'll probably test a couple of other games, see how they look on stream. Although Genshin really does present itself well on stream. Man, Wanderer. Wow. He does a lot of Anemmo damage. I like how he just like flies around. Yeah, he like flies around real fast. All right, but anyway, I do think that Tech Power Up. I haven't read any of the reviews besides Tech Power Up. They're usually the first one I go to if I'm looking for a written review of something. But for the others, like for the videos, so far I've watched Digital Foundry's review, Gamers Nexus, Linus, Hardware Unboxed. Probably there's one that I'm forgetting. I'd have to go back and look through the history, but I did watch a bunch of reviews, all back to back. And I also watched Epoch Vox's. He had the 7900 XT. He didn't have the 7900 XTX. But he did give a lot of positive feedback because I feel like they are moving the right way in terms of the media engine. Although I still kind of feel like some of the criticisms raised against their encoder in the past was a little bit unprecedented because it's not that bad. Like as we're seeing right now, we are streaming using the VCE or using the AMF encoder off of the 6950 XT. So I will be streaming off of the newer GPU, assuming I can get my hands on one tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. But if anything is to go by the 4080's launch, I do think that there is a good chance to get one of these tomorrow if you're near a Micro Center. Now, I went to Best Buy today to ask them in person if they're going to get them. They said that it's typically going to be online only. So let me test the audio real quick. They said that it's typically going to be online only. So, okay, it's kind of a little bit loud. Alright, this is the volume one. Let's see, I can't really exceed that, I think. So I think we're good there. But yeah, as far as Best Buy goes, it's going to be online only. I don't know if they're going to sell it. I don't really even know if they're going to even have them. To be honest, Best Buy is very flaky when it comes to AMD product launches compared to NVIDIA. If they have them, they're probably going to have way less stock, for one thing. How do I get out of here? Why? So just to put things into perspective, for the 4080 launch, like Micro Center, the typical Micro Center got like 100 cards for the 4080 launch, but they only had like 50 people show up for the launch. Why is there something aggroing when I'm like not even near them? But I think that it will be possible to get one without too much trouble. This guy needs to go. You need to go, pal. And that lion was collateral damage there. But I think that it's a good choice. It's a good alternative to the 4080. And it is cheaper. So it's like, in my case, if I was going to get one, if I was going to get the 4080, I would get the 4080 and that's all I can get on that kind of, if you're having like a $1,200 budget. Whereas with this, I could probably pick up another SSD. Like I can get another 2 terabyte NVMe drive alongside this GPU for additional game storage. And that'll end up costing the same amount of money as like a 4080 just by itself. Now, one thing that it remains to be seen, I am curious to know if the game bundles. So right now, if you buy a 6000 series RDNA GPU, RDNA 2 GPU, you do get the Callisto protocol for free, bundled with the GPU, and you also get the Dead Island 2. So you do get 2 free games with the 6000 series GPUs. Now, I don't know if that same promotion applies to the new 7000 series GPUs. If it did, that would be awesome, because that would be like an amazing value compared to the 4080, like hands down. I mean, it already is a better value because it's 24 gigabytes of memory as opposed to 16 on the 4080. So in my mind, longevity wise, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like the 4080, the only argument that people can make in favor of a 4080, which is $200 more, is really the ray tracing. But like the ray tracing on the 7900 XT is basically 3090 Ti level, so it's not like it's bad. So I really don't think that there's really that much of an advantage with the 4080. The thing that I find interesting with the 4080 isn't so much the ray tracing advantage, it's more so the efficiency advantage. I was surprised to know like the joules per kilowatt, or the joules per frame on the 4080 is actually more efficient than the 7900 XTX. So that was interesting to see. But that's because I feel like NVIDIA is back to using TSMC, and with TSMC, when NVIDIA would quote a TDP number for their graphics card, typically the graphics card, they would give you a number, but then the graphics card would typically be below that number by some amount. Worst case scenario, it would be over that slightly or at that number. And those are worst case scenarios. Those are like, you know, ray tracing is going full blast, and the fan profile's ramping up and things heating up a lot. So in general, anytime NVIDIA's on TSMC, like they are now with the 40 series, they tend to be more efficient than their quoted TBP spec. Whereas if AMD tells you a number, like in this case, 350 watts, well, then you can expect it to be 350 watts if you have the FPS uncapped. The cool thing about both of them is if you do play with frame rate caps, like if you cap at 60 FPS for a game like Genshin Impact here, or if you're playing, you know, a game and you cap it at 90 or 120 or whatever the maximum refresh rate of the monitor is, like 144 hertz, then they both will use less power, and that is where NVIDIA does enjoy a little bit of a efficiency advantage over AMD this generation. So in my opinion, that's really the only strong point for the 4080. But thing is, it's more money, so in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not worth the extra $200, considering it's less memory. So you're only getting 16 gigs of memory as opposed to 24 on the AMD card. So honestly, that alone, yes, it does use slightly more electricity, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, who cares? It performs better in rasterization. It gives you 8 gigabytes more memory. Its ray tracing is basically 3090 Ti's ray tracing performance. So there isn't really anything I can really criticize the 7900 XT, other than the fact that, you know, it's $1,000, but we can all thank NVIDIA for that being a thing now. So really the price is my only complaint, but you know, compared to the competition, it's still, I mean, it's weird to say $1,000 is good value, but the reality is it just is, because that's kind of what your options are right now. I mean, the only other options would be to buy like a 6800 XT if you can find one. They're getting very, very hard to find because they're selling out pretty quick, especially with those Dead Island 2 and Callisto Protocol game bundles. So, I don't know. I think if it was me, and if I didn't want to buy last gen, if I was okay buying last gen, I would get the 6900 XT. Especially if I was on like a 1440p monitor. I really think that these new cards, both the 40 series NVIDIA cards and the 7000 series AMD cards, are really geared for 4K. I really, if I was playing on a 1440p monitor, I would not even consider buying either the 40 series or the 7000 series, like the Radeon cards. Like, because I'm on a 4K monitor, because I upgraded like back in August, I got the 4K, like the Sony InZone, the one that we're streaming on right now. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I've got a 6900 XT, but it's one of those deals where it's like, okay, now I can actually get better 4K performance than what I had before, and it is a noticeable change. Like for 1440p, 1080, yeah, it's faster as well, but can you justify spending that much money if you're still on a 1440p monitor? I think the answer to that question is no. Some people might argue that, oh, what about high FPS? Well, you know, 1080p, 240 hertz is doable with last generation hardware. So I don't really think that that's a strong argument. So wait, what are we doing here? So we don't need to do any of that. So I think that's it. I got all the dailies. No one said anything in the chat. We do have viewers. But what do you guys think? Are you guys... I mean, I figure people who are watching the stream are probably interested in the 7900 XTX or the XT to some degree, based off of the title of the video. So we are streaming on the 6950 XT right now. Let me go ahead and bring up GPU-Z. We'll just kind of show what we're streaming on so people can see. Open CPU-Z as well. Hopefully there's no update on these. Okay, good. So let me throw this up on the stream so people can see. Well, let me just put it over here. Add source. CPU-Z. There's CPU-Z. Let me get GPU-Z. Okay. So you guys can see, this is the current... Why is this over here like this? How do I move this guy? Oh, there we go. Is that legible? Yeah, okay, I guess everybody can see that. Okay, this is the streaming machine. This is the reason why the background, if people have noticed, if people have watched my streams before, probably wondering why is there like this curtain and stuff. Well, that's because we're in a different system. This is the Intel system that I did a video build on. I did the unboxing. Here's the box, for those wondering, 13900K. That is what we're streaming with as the CPU. You can see it right there on the screen. The other system that I typically stream on in the other setup is the Ryzen 9 7950X. Tomorrow, assuming I can get a 7900 XTX retail sample from Micro Center, I will be pairing it up with the 13th gen Intel processor. We will cover this one first, and then we will revisit and cover the Ryzen 7950X paired up with the 7900 XTX at a future date. So, just like with what I did when I covered Intel Arc A770, I did pair that up with a 5800X. I did a live stream thing. We're gonna go ahead and test it with 13th gen when it comes to the Radeon flagship. We're gonna do this one first. I've noticed a lot of interest in the 13th gen processor. I'm not really sure why, because it's not really that much better than 12th gen Intel. I really find the AMD stuff more interesting because AM5 is a brand new socket, brand new platform after being on AM4 for a number of years, whereas this thing is basically a rehash of Alder Lake with extra E-cores, basically double E-cores from Alder Lake and a little bit faster clock speed. So, but we're going to be doing this because I think people are probably going to want to see how the 13900K performs, or how good it can like stretch the legs of the 7900 XTX. And then we will also follow up with the Ryzen plus Radeon combo in a future video, because I think a lot of people who are probably going to buy a 7900 XTX on launch day fall into one of two camps. The first camp is either the people who couldn't buy last generation 30 series or RDNA 2 GPUs, and they were just kind of fed up with what happened for the last 2 years, where scalpers constantly bought them up, mining startup companies bought them in bulk, like behind the scenes. They kind of skipped the retailer market. And then you had the supply shortages, silicon shortages with manufacturing, with all the factories and all that kind of stuff, which basically there's a group of people that are fed up with how all that was, how the consumer was kind of left holding the bag. You had exorbitant prices, you know, like 3080s were going for like $2,000 on eBay a year ago. 3090 was like $3,000 or whatever it was, and then you know, 6900 XT and those kind of things were like well over $1,800. So they weren't scalped as badly, but AMD's supply was even shorter than NVIDIA's, so it was still hard to get those. So I think that, who is the 7900 XTX for? Well, I kind of think that it's for people that weren't able to get last gen, and even though they can afford it now because the prices have come down, they don't want to feel like they're being forced by NVIDIA to buy last generation, because NVIDIA has literally set the price on the 4080 so high at $1,200 starting. So we're not even talking about AIB because those are even more money, but they've set the price so high that I think a lot of people are just kind of fed up with that behavior, that anti-consumer behavior, and they're just kind of like going to skip they're just not going to buy last generation. Unless they're desperate and they don't know anything about AMD, then they probably already bought like a 3070 or something, you know. But who is this for? Who is the 7900 XT for? Well, it's for the people who held out to see the very last GPU launch of the year, and held off on buying the 4090 because they didn't want to spend $1,600 plus. They held out on buying the 4080 because it seems kind of like a scam. It's very, you know, sus. We'll just put it that way. And then the fact that there's also like another 4080 that got canceled, and now it's probably going to show up in January as a 4070 or 4070 Ti. Who knows what's going to happen there. But we already know that that's weaker than what AMD's launching tomorrow. So that's kind of a moot point. So really, the other group of people that this GPU would be for are the diehard AMD fans. So the people who have typically always bought Radeon from, you know, who knows how long. But that would be the other demographic, or the other target buyer of this type of GPU. So you guys can see here, if we look at the sensor, there's the GPU. I'm not really doing a whole lot right now. We're just playing. We're on a Wickle driver. This is the latest driver, November 30th. This is a reference 6950 XT that we are streaming on. We are using the AMF encoder. We are not using CPU encoding. We are not using QuickSync. We are actually using the AMD AMF encoder. So that's going to be it for the streaming systems. You guys now see the specs. The memory is basically 64 gigabytes of DDR5, 5600. So that's it. Yeah. So the main board is a Gigabyte Z790 Aorus Master. This is the exact same computer that I did do the recent build video on. For those that are tuning in now and they're kind of interested in the computer that we're using and the system specs. So I probably should have put that in the description of the stream, but let's go ahead and close out of these. We don't need these anymore. In fact, we'll just remove them. Okay. Okay, so nobody has had any questions. Let's go ahead and look at the reviews, or let's look at one of them in particular. Let me move this down. Okay. So this review is by Tech Power Up. I'm just going straight to the summary page. So the title of the review is RX 7900 XTX Review, Disrupting the RTX 4080. So the value and conclusion, we're just going to kind of skip to this end here because I think that this is probably the best summary that I've seen of pros and cons. So the pros. Big performance jump versus last generation. That's true. Much more affordable than the 4080. Yes, you know, it's 1,000 versus 1,200. It's faster than the 4080 in rasterization, so that's kind of another win. Although I kind of question that a little bit because I think the 4080's not. It really depends on the game. I'll just say it depends on the game. In some games, the 4080 is actually faster in rasterization, but at 4K, which is where I think people who are spending this much money should actually be considering one of these. You basically have to have a 4K monitor. If you don't have a 4K monitor, I'm just going to go ahead and say that it's probably not worth it. I really think it's not worth it, but it really depends on what you already have. And my question to you, if you have a 4K monitor and you have a really old GPU, is why do you have a 4K monitor paired up with a really old GPU unless you just bought that 4K monitor? Incredible energy efficiency. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that the energy efficiency is not really that much more energy efficient than the RDNA 2 GPUs, so that'll be interesting. 30 series irrelevant, definitely price drop to MSRP finally. Yes, it finally went to MSRP. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Actually, let's go ahead and look if that is true. Because I haven't looked at 3080 in a while. So 3080, we'll do sold by Newegg. MSRP is $700. Remember that. So if it's over $700, it's not MSRP. So all these pre-builds, I really don't know if there are any left. To be honest, the 3080 doesn't really seem like it's there anymore. Let's try 3080. Nothing. Well, I guess they did sell out of them. RTX 3090? Ti maybe? No. Well, I guess they're gone. So Nvidia accomplished their goal. I know there's 3070s still around, I would think. Let's go to graphics cards. There we go. Yeah, I think in general for consumers have kind of been shafted since the pandemic. I really think that it's kind of really sketchy that a lot of the hardware companies that make, you know, GPUs, etc., but not just GPUs. GPUs are probably the most visible, noticeable network effect with the pricing. So, but yeah, I think we need Intel to make some banger GPUs. Well, that's not going to happen anytime soon. If you're HMan 615, Intel, yeah, Intel does need to make better GPUs, but I wouldn't count on it. Not for a long time. 2025 probably, if they're still doing it. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, you guys, I assume if you guys are tuning in, you probably watched my Intel Arc A770 streams and my A770 coverage. I will revisit that GPU in the future. The reason why I haven't done much with Intel Arc is because, first of all, you can't stream with AV1, and AV1 was a really big selling point. You can only record gameplay footage or desktop footage using the AV1 encoders. You cannot actually stream with AV1. A lot of people don't seem to realize that. So the fact that NVIDIA and AMD now also have AV1 encoding, they're in the same boat as Intel. The other thing that is a little bit disappointing with Intel is OBS and XSplit, all the streaming service, or I guess the applications, they don't actually have the built-in support yet for some reason. Like, case in point, like when the 4090 and the Arc GPU launched on the same day, OBS only had support for AV1 on the RTX 4090 and not the Intel GPU, which was very disappointing. Considering I did buy the A770 on launch day and wanted to test those features, but I couldn't. Yeah, not sure if you should buy the 7900 XTX for gaming rig tomorrow. I'm upgrading from a mobile. So how do you have a mobile GTX 1050 Ti? I thought those were only in laptops. I didn't even know they made such a thing for desktop. Because wouldn't it just be a 1050 Ti desktop? Like, how is that mobile? How is that mobile if that's not in a laptop? So, okay, you're building a PC. Okay. Well, looking at this, this GPU right now, this Power Color 6950 XT is below MSRP. Although, you know, it's kind of weird because the MSRP, it's kind of a permanent drop, but you don't really know what the actual drop is. 4070 Ti maybe, yeah, but would you really pay that much for a 70 numbered product? I certainly won't. 4080, so this one's 1300. This is above MSRP. This is above MSRP, and it's the Ventus. That isn't even the good one. The Founders Edition is actually better than this one. And then you got this. This is a good deal. So here's one that's pretty good. The best deal we did. So I did a live stream around Black Friday to show people like really good deals for GPUs, and we couldn't find any good deals for the NVIDIA 30 series, but we did find some pretty good ones for the RDNA 2 GPUs from AMD. So here's a pretty good one. This is not as good as Black Friday. Black Friday we saw one on Newegg for $535. I think it was $535 for an ASRock Phantom Gaming 6800 XTX, and that includes the 2 free games. Because right now, if you buy the AMD card, you do get Callisto Protocol, which just came out, and you get Dead Island 2. So I'm really curious to know if this promotion applies to the 7000 series tomorrow. I highly doubt it, but if it does, that will really be a good value add for these AMD GPUs. So, but that is very good value, because essentially you're getting, like, if you're just looking at this alone, this is faster than a 3080 in rasterization, way more memory, 16 gigabytes. It has the same amount of memory as a 4080, and it only costs this, and you're getting the 2 free games. Like, you know, regardless of whether you care about these games or not, the fact that you're getting 2 AAA games for free, that's not, you can't really complain about that. So that's really good. We'll see. I really hope that that applies to the 7900, but I kind of doubt it. So this one, that's this is actually below MSRP by $100, because the MSRP of the 6750 was $549. That's $100 off. This is above MSRP because this 3070 Ti MSRP is $600 or $599. So this is not a good deal. This is a terrible deal, especially that it only has 8 gigabytes of memory, and you're paying that much money for an 8 gigabyte card that's over 2 years old now. After seeing the 79 XTX performance, I just got the 4080. They are almost the same price, but this is better ray tracing. I guess if you use those, I don't know. I refuse to buy the 4080 personally. It has less memory. It's only 16 gigabytes versus 24 on the XTX. The ray tracing on the 7900 XTX is basically the same as the 3090 Ti, and it has the same amount of memory as the 3090 Ti. So in my book, you know, it really depends on how much you weigh ray tracing. And the fact is, with both cards, you would turn on, like if you're doing 4K, you would turn DLSS on to improve ray tracing. Otherwise, you're going to be sub 60 FPS oftentimes if you're running ray tracing at 4K, especially on newer games for the 4080. And the same problem will happen with the 7900 XTX, but with the 7900 XTX, you'll just turn on FSR2, and you know it'll be a little bit slower. It's like 30 series ray tracing, but you know it's not really that bad. So I don't know. I think the 7900 XTX will age a lot better. So yeah, to me the 4080 kind of doesn't really exist, but you know, whatever. So this one, 3060, this is actually below, no, this is actually above MSRP. This is above MSRP because this isn't even the Ti, so that's a bad deal. Like, I haven't seen any good deals for the old 30 series cards. This is $80 above MSRP, considering the MSRP is $399 on the 3060 Ti. Yeah. Well, okay, I mean, it depends on the use case. I personally don't really care much about ray tracing, but the type of games that I play don't really use ray tracing. There's probably a few of them that I can think of, but the reality is not really that many of them. Because I play games like Final Fantasy XIV, you saw earlier, if you were tuning in, Genshin Impact, which is actually still open right now. You know, I play a lot of like single-player RPGs, Elden Ring, Neo 2 action RPGs, Horizon Zero Dawn. You know, like these are the type of games that I play. So honestly, it really just kind of depends on what your use case is, and that's kind of how it's always been with hardware. Thoughts on getting a 3080 ROG Strix secondhand from a close friend at $680? I think that's a bad value. $680 is too much. Too much for a 3080. It's over 2 years old, and the MSRP is $700. So no, I don't think that's a good deal. Should I make an effort and upgrade to newer releases? It kind of depends on what games you play. Now, the fact that you're looking at a 3080, you guys need to keep in mind, the new AMD cards that release tomorrow, their ray tracing performance is like the 3090 and the 3090 Ti. Maybe the 3080 Ti at worst, but like they're basically the same, but they're way better in rasterization. So if you can, probably look at the 7900 XT, or look at a new 6900 XT. Because look, you're talking $680. Look at this. Look at this, dude. Look at this. Power Color 6800 XT Red Devil triple fan, 16 gigs of RAM versus only 10 gigs on that ROG Strix, and it's cheaper than what you're wanting to pay your friend for a used GPU. To me, and you get 2 free games. Like, you get Callisto Protocol and Dead Island 2. In my mind, plus the warranty, like, dude, this is a no-brainer. Like, I would not buy your friend's 3080 Strix. No. No. My advice would be to get something new. But again, I don't really like buying secondhand used. I don't, even if it's from someone I know. I personally wouldn't do it, especially at that price. Like, if you were to buy that from your friend, he would have to sell it to you for like $500 or less. I would say probably around $500 is fair. But even then, like, look at this. This is $70 more with 2 free games, and it's brand new, and it has more memory. No, I wouldn't buy the 3080 used. Not for that. I'd probably pay like $450 for that. I picked up a 6700 XT 330 on Black Friday. That's a really good deal. That's a really good deal. I mean, I think we saw that deal back when we were doing the stream. Unreal 5 games to upgrade to 40. And I bet when you bought that 6700 XT, you also got the 2 free games. You got a Callisto Protocol and the Dead Island 2 voucher for when that game comes out next year. So yeah, that's a pretty good deal. Because you got to think about it, that's like $120 in games right there that you're getting for free. But see, like, looking through here, like, I can't recommend the NVIDIA cards. Like, this is overpriced, and that's a 3060. Even though it's a 12 gig, it's like, ew, that price is just bad. And then this is bad value as well. Like, okay, guys, let me make something easier. Let me make a visual so that people can kind of see why I'm saying something is bad versus why I say something is good. I think it becomes more clear if you actually know the MSRP. So let me go ahead and open up Paint. Where is it? Okay. So let's do this. Let's open Paint. Get that going. Move that down here. Whoops. Where'd it go? I probably need to close out a Genshin. Hold on, let me close out a Genshin Impact because I can still hear the game audio. Yeah, I mean, right now, like, personally, okay, if you wanted a 30 series GPU and you wanted a very high-end 30 series GPU, like a 3080, 3090, 3090 Ti, like that class of GPU, you've technically already missed the boat because you're not really going to find any good deals unless you can buy secondhand off of eBay or some friend or something. And they have to sell to you at a pretty big discount. So, and the thing is, buying secondhand used off of eBay is always kind of, you know, questionable. But anyway, let me kind of draw this out so people know what is a good deal versus what is a bad deal. So let's look at AMD's RDNA 2 MSRP. So you guys, if you're looking at these, you'll know. These are the MSRPs. Remember, these are MSRPs of AMD's last generation. Yeah, this one. This was $650. This was Oh boy, this is the one I always forget. This was like 579. We'll just call it 580. RX 6750. The MSRP was 550. RX 6700 XT. This one, the MSRP was 480. RX 6650. So I think that we have a little higher prices, but I'm really undecided right now. I'm really thinking about. Yeah, the fact that you're willing to wait, you were the one asking about the 3080. Make sure. Yeah, the fact that you were asking about spending, the fact that you were considering $680 US for a 3080, in my mind, you definitely want to look at either one of these outgoing, like the 6800 XT that I mentioned earlier for 500 something. But in Europe, you know, obviously the euro, it's going to be different. But if you're able to spend that much money, you're probably better served with a brand new RDNA 2 GPU or possibly the 7900 XT. Keep in mind, the 7900 XT has 20 gigabytes of VRAM. That means that it will age very well at 4K gaming over time. It'll never become VRAM limited. I can't remember this one. 400. I don't know what this one is. I'm just going to say 400. I'll have to look it up. This one was 380. And then anything below this, and then I don't really care because it's like, you know, these don't really matter for the target audience. For the target audience, these don't matter. So we're not even going to list that last one. So, but anyway, this gives you an idea, right? So if you're looking at a deal, whether it's used or new, you can use this to help determine if it's a good deal or not. Now we're going to look at the NVIDIA one, because we're going to prove a point here when I say that NVIDIA RTX 30 isn't really worth it at the current prices, at least if we're talking US dollars. 30 series. Because this is gonna surprise people when they see these prices. So RTX 3090 Ti, $2,000 MSRP. That makes the 4080 look like good value. But then again, keep in mind that this never really this launched when GPUs were still being scalped and they were very hard to find. Like it was earlier this year, like in March of this year. So they were able to just get away with the sleazy tactic of, oh, we're just going to charge $2,000 for it. 1% lower on the that are not much. 1% lower on the new are good, not much sputtering. I think you mean stuttering. Yeah, the thing is, if you look at those results, the 1%. So basically, I think I saw some of them. Some of them were like 181 FPS as the 1% low. If the max was like if the max was like 240 something, and the 1% low was 181. 181 is already higher than a 144 hertz monitor, so the 1% low is basically pointless. Now again, it kind of depends on the game, but yeah, 1500 for the 3090, 3080 Ti was 1200, RTX 3080 was 700. A lot of people seem to look at 3080s and think they're getting a good deal, but they're really not, considering that's the MSRP. 3070 Ti is $600. RTX, hold on a second, is that right? Yes, that's right. 3070 is $500. RTX 3060 Ti is $400. RTX 3060, and this is as far down as we'll go, is I think $330. So these are the MSRP prices of all the outgoing models, both the last generation AMD RDNA 2 and the NVIDIA 30 series. So this is the reason why I say that currently there are no good deals for the NVIDIA cards, because none of the NVIDIA cards are selling, especially the ones here, because you can't really buy these anymore. These are kind of gone. You missed the boat on those. The only option is eBay. Maybe a Micro Center has a couple of them, but these basically don't exist anymore. So that kind of leaves the 3080 and everything below it. But realistically, it's really these that are the ones that are still available for purchase. And as we saw on, now let's go look at Micro Center. Because remember, keep in mind, 400 3060 Ti, 600 3070 Ti. Let's see if we can find anything close to these prices. This was selling 500, but now out of stock. Yeah, it's definitely out of stock because there was really good deals on it. This is the reason why I said there were really good deals on this GPU in particular. Because remember, that's the MSRP. Anything lower than that, particularly during the Black Friday deal, I think the lowest I saw was $535 on Newegg, and there was a $20 mail-in rebate, which makes it $515, which is roughly at that $500 price that you're mentioning. So yeah, you could, and it came with 2 free games. A lot of people forget that you're getting 2 free games on all these GPUs. You're not getting any of that extra value on the 30 series. And these GPUs have more memory. Let's do 16 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 12 gigabyte, 12. This is 8 and 8. Okay, let's look at, you know what I should have done? I should have cleaned up, hold on, I gotta clean this up. I don't want to make it look bad. But you guys get the idea, right? Like 16, 16, 16. Basically, AMD gives you more memory at each price point relative to the core of the GPU's performance. So it's, in my mind, these are on good fire sale deals right now. So memory for the NVIDIA, yeah, 24, that's good, because that's good. The 3090 Ti matches the upcoming 7900 XTX. 24 on the 3090. Why would I not recommend the 3090? Because half of the memory is on the back of the card, so it cooks itself. That's why Amazon's New World MMO killed these cards. Just kind of a little trivia there for people that were wondering. So this one, 12, 10. Although, yes, there were a few of them that were 12. I do know that. But they were very hard to get, and they were very short supply. So this one is 8, 8, and then this is 8. And then this, for some reason, was 12. I don't know why. I don't know why. This is kind of a, you know, a retarded move on NVIDIA. Because like, why would you put more memory on a cheaper GPU that is worse than, like, I don't know. But anyway, that's it. Hey, Joel. So we're kind of going over... what we talked about during the Black Friday, but we're trying to justify whether AMD's GPUs that launch tomorrow are worth it or worth picking up relative to what the outgoing models are going on sale for. 3060 was a mining GPU. Yeah, but you could still get one, though. You could still use it for gaming, although it was kind of lousy. And then people will be like, oh, ray tracing for this. But he's like, who cares? Ray tracing on a 60 series GPU is never good, regardless of if it's better than the AMD one or not. So, but anyway, so you guys can see, like, this is what you need to compare to if you're looking for a good deal on an older NVIDIA 30 series or an AMD RDNA 2 GPU. So now, with that, now that we know this, let's go and look at the prices to see if we can actually find one for a decent deal. So let's go back and look at Micro Center just briefly. Well, you know what? Let's try Newegg again. The only problem with Newegg is you're going to find a bunch of, like, from China. $900 for a 3080 Ti from China? I don't think so. 3080 10 gig for $30 more than MSRP or $29 more from China? No. See, these are basically all gone. So really that only leaves like 3070 Ti. Some say NVIDIA is hoarding 30 series, and if AMD has stock, we could see some fun. First of all, if those waiting for NVIDIA to lower prices, NVIDIA's not going to lower prices. I hate to burst your bubble, but they're not going to lower the prices on the 40 series because they don't need to. They don't compete on price. They compete on what they call features. So they've made this very well known to the public. They've talked about this in their investor meetings. They do not compete on price. They are going to set the price, and they're just going to let it do that. So those thinking that the $1,000 AMD card, which is better value than the NVIDIA one, is going to, if they're hoping that it'll drive down the 4080 so they can buy the 4080, well, you're going to be waiting for a very long time, probably a year, because, and by the time that happens, the Ti is going to be out. So, you know, It's not going to happen. I would not hold out for a 4080 if you're thinking that NVIDIA is going to lower the prices. I don't think they're hoarding 30 series. They're they're trying to sell all of them. They're trying to get rid of all of it. You built the mini ITX PC with the 5700X gigabyte and the Intel Arc. Oh, how was that doing? I'm curious to know like what the thermals are on the Arc GPU when it's in the small form factor. So basically, okay, here's one that's in the US, but it's not from Newegg. It's from some third-party seller. $673 for a GPU that is supposed to be $600. $73 over MSRP. So once again, I'm not able to find any NVIDIA card that's at the actual price. Look at this. A 3070 Ti for from Newegg for the MSRP of a 3080. That is a bad deal. So basically, there are no good deals. I mean, what is this? A GTX 1060 from China? That was a mining card. That was a mining card. Well, okay, it's probably if it's marketed as new, whatever, unless it's some kind of refurb or something, but I don't know. So honestly, I kind of think that it's slim pickings. It's slim pickings for the NVIDIA stuff, the way I see it. So let's look at AMD, I guess. RX 6800 XT. Worked fine. You had to order thermal paste because the CPU was running too hot with the thermal paste on the AIO. Oh. You got 6800 XTs from Yeston, direct from Yeston, for like, what is this? This is $9 over, about $10, $9 or $10 over MSRP for the waifu edition. So it's like, whatever. But that's the only one that I can see. So this one, I don't know what's up with the gigabyte, but we saw the same problem during Black Friday. So here's a good one, $550 for this Power Color Red Devil. Here's the one that was on sale for like $535 during Black Friday with the mail-in rebate that made it $515. So that's sold out now. So there are a couple of them, but you can see that both AMD and NVIDIA's older GPUs are definitely disappearing at the high end. So like the 80 and the 90 stuff is all disappearing. So like here's the 6900 XT. Now this one's MSRP was $1,000. You can get one here for $700, so that's $300 off MSRP. But I don't know, it's one of those deals where it's like, yeah, I would rather get the 6800 XT for $550 than pay an additional, $150 more for what, 10% more, maybe 15% more performance with the 6900 XT. I don't know. I kind of think the 6800 XT is the best deal right now that you can find overall, just like in terms of like absolute value across the entire stack of AMD and NVIDIA's offerings. The 6800 XT is really the king of value right now. And maybe the 6900 XT, if you can find one for around $700 like this one, or maybe if this was like $650, that would be a really good deal. But yeah, I think that's kind of like the maximum where I would go if it was my money, buying one of these GPUs. So if we look at the lower stack, so the 6750, this one is, okay, that's not relevant. So this one, the MSRP was $550 if I'm not mistaken. $550, or was it $450? No, it was $550. So this is like almost $150 off. It's the mech one though, which I would not buy personally because I don't like the MSI mech. I think they're too loud. They're not big enough coolers. So here's a decent one from the United States. So this one's actually from Newegg, ASRock Gaming, 12 gigabytes for $429. ASRock Challenger Pro. This one might be better value, but it's probably a worse cooler but they're both triple fans, so I don't know. You'd have to do your research on the cooler. But the cool thing is you do get the 2 free games. So, and then XFX, these are too much money. So for some reason, XFX, the Merc ones are like way too much money. And then the reference cards, you can just buy that off of AMD.com. So these are kind of irrelevant. Sapphires are basically all gone. We talked about Sapphire before. Like during the Black Friday deals, I did talk about Sapphire. For those who are not familiar with AMD's AIB partner cards, Sapphire is basically the go-to brand. That is probably the best brand, like in general, both AMD and NVIDIA. Now I know Sapphire only makes Radeon cards, but Sapphire's quality is basically second to none. So that's the reason why you can't find them, because they're all gone. Because people who are in the know bought them already, so you can't get them. XFX is also kind of good now, but see how they're overpriced, and they're all like, you know, they're almost gone basically, the stock. So that kind of just leaves ASRock. So in reality, there's not a lot of good choices. The bottom line, from what I've seen here, is there are not a lot of good choices for the remaining cards. But if you are looking for one, the good deals are on the RDNA 2 GPUs, not on the RTX 30 GPUs. So, I mean, hopefully this kind of proves that just looking at Newegg here. If we look at Micro Center, we kind of see the exact same scenario play out. See, so this is like $50 over MSRP for a 3060 Ti. So not good value, considering how old the GPU is at this point. And then this is the same price. This is $100 below MSRP. So that's better than the 3060 Ti because, first of all, this card is faster than... This is more like a 3070, and it's priced below the MSRP as opposed to being $50 above the MSRP for worse performance and a worse cooler, so, and less memory. So, you know, it's very hard for me to recommend the 30 series just by looking at these prices. And then if we look at 4080, so this is $200 over MSRP. For the XFX, oh, if you go on Amazon, you can get that 6800 for 500. Yeah, if you can find them. They're very hard to find, though. There's not a lot of them in stock on Amazon. For the XFX and Power Color versions, maybe GPU miners wait for low GPU inventory to finally sell. I don't know. No, from what I've seen, because I've been monitoring eBay for several weeks now, and from what I have seen personally, I think that they've already kind of dropped all their stock. Like, I think anybody who's trying to sell their mining cards have already listed them. The vast majority. Now, they haven't listed all of them, so there's probably like a second wave of mining cards that they're keeping in reserve. Because the thing with mining is, unless you're like completely getting out of mining 100% forever, the smart way to do it is to offload some of the GPUs to basically cut your losses, sort of. But you're not going to sell all of your GPUs because you never know if mining is going to pick back up in the near future. And if you look at the trends, every 2 to 2.5 years, crypto like creeps back up. So it's like the business cycle. It goes up and down. So you got to think about it like this. In the last big run-up that we had before the one that crashed was 2017. So the year that Vega 64 and Vega 56 and the 1080 Ti and Ryzen 1st Gen, interestingly enough, when all those products launched during that year, 2017, that was when Bitcoin and Ethereum really had their first massive run-up. Then they had another one before that, back in 2014. But that one wasn't nearly as big. That was back when Litecoin mining was profitable. But in 2017, there was a massive run-up, and at the very start of 2018, the whole crypto market crashed, and then all throughout 2018 and 2019, it was all kind of a bear market. But then we all know what happened in 2020. It all picked back up during the pandemic, and then it was really, really good in 2021, And then this year comes around, and we all know what happens. It crashed. So like I said, it comes in cycles. 2 to 2.5 years, it'll go back up. So I think that some of the people that are in crypto for the long haul on the mining side are probably going to hold on to some amount of their GPUs if they're not already mining altcoins and converting that stuff into Bitcoin. So that's kind of the way I see it. From what I understand about how like mining crypto works, how to be profitable in a bear market is key. And I don't think that people who are really serious about mining are going to sell everything they've got and completely exit the market. Now, there will be a lot that do that, but we'll see. Do you think crypto is dead? I don't think so. I don't agree. Bitcoin will come back. It's every 2 years. Mark my words. 2020, what is it? This is 2022. 2024. 2024 it'll come back. You'll see. Keep in mind that in 2014, there was no Ethereum. There was like Bitcoin and Litecoin. Bitcoin was the gold, Litecoin was the silver. They had their nice run up at that time. So we'll see. Thinking that it's dead for good sounds like a lack of understanding of the market and a lack of understanding of economics and business cycle. It's all business cycle. It's basically the same as the stock market. So you posted a link in the Discord for the power color. Okay. Let me see here. Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah. Yeah, may arrive after Christmas, though. So I wonder, like, it's selling from Power Color? We'll see. Yeah, but that's a pretty good one. But I kind of want to... It's interesting. That one's got, like, a button on the back. That one's got, like, an interesting button on the back. But what I wanted to look at here... So for those who joined the stream late or recently, we didn't talk too much about the reviews. I want to look at the reviews. We'll probably bring up YouTube. Let me see if I pull this, put this over here. How do I do that? So if I want to show you guys RX 7900 XTX, the Linus review. So I watched a couple of reviews this morning, but the first thing, let's just kind of look at Tech Power Up's written review, because I think this is a good one. The lowest in AMD GPU, in my opinion, to still be able to do ray tracing well on Minecraft. Yeah, and it's the lowest end or the lowest price GPU that you can actually get. You can actually get 16 gigabytes of memory from AMD. Not counting ARC. Now I know there's the ARC A770, but that's not nearly in the same. That's not like an enthusiast performance level GPU. So I did watch a lot of the reviews. So I'm looking here. So I watched Gamers Nexus, Hardware Unboxed, Paul's Hardware, Jay's 2 Cents, Linus Tech Tips, and Digital Foundry. And then I watched Epoch's Vox did a video. It wasn't really a review. It was more of like, he didn't have the 7900 XTX. He had the 7900 XT. But he was able to show some interesting things with the encoder, the media side. Like the fact that they don't actually limit you to the number of concurrent encoding streams you can have going, which I thought was kind of hilarious in the sense that it just kind of shows that they didn't really put a hard limit in there. Like Nvidia limits you to 3 on the RTX 40 series cards, whereas I think Epoch was able to get, I think he said he was getting it to run like 6 of them concurrently, and the bottleneck wasn't the GPU, it was the CPU maxing out all 32 threads on the 7950X. That was kind of hilarious. because you're encoding with the GPU, but you've got so many streams going that it becomes CPU bottlenecked because the CPU can't keep up with how many encoding streams are going off of the GPU encoded. I found that very interesting. That was probably the most interesting video out of all of them. But I did find Digital Foundry's video interesting as well, because they did talk a lot about, they did go into detail on the ray tracing side. And I'm not someone who's that interested in ray tracing, but I did find the info that they shared on the ray tracing. It was essentially like a 3090 Ti. Lowest end, yeah. It's a 3060 Ti performance on the Intel Arc. Yeah, which is basically in line with where it's priced at. Well, I mean, it's, yeah. But, I mean, this is a good summary of the pros and the cons. So, you know, big performance jump versus last generation. Much more affordable than the 4080, so yeah, that's true. And that'll probably hold true considering the AIB cards. Faster than the 4080 rasterization. Incredible energy efficiency. This is the only one that I find a little bit questionable, because I did find that the 4080 is relatively energy efficient as well. Low temperatures, but I think Tech Power Up really means energy efficiency in general, not really comparing it with anything. So low temperatures, so that's good. But I do think that that's because the fan RPM spins more. It spins faster at load than the RDNA 2 reference cards, which were extremely quiet. So ray tracing performance is improved. So we all know that. It's basically 30 series ray tracing. Idle fan stop, all of them have that. Beautiful. I hate this feature myself. I really don't like idle fan stop. I always turn it off. Oh, Joey, so you've been listening while driving? That's cool. They say beautiful design. I mean, this is very subjective, so I guess you could say that's a pro on a review. Doesn't really seem like an objective thing though, but I guess it counts for something. 24 gigabytes of VRAM. That's really nice. That's better than 4080. You're basically getting 4090s levels of VRAM for $1,000 as opposed to like $1,600. Backplate included. You got the 3080 Strix in November for $1,100 and 3090 Ti for $1,100 a few months ago. Yeah, did invite some people to the Discord. Okay. Yeah, I saw Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't know who Obi-Wan Kenobi is, but Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi, you know, and it's interesting enough. I've got like a lightsaber here myself, but Obi-Wan Kenobi has joined the Discord. I may have to refresh the link if people that are watching live want to join the Discord, because I don't have that in the description of the video. So the other pros listed here is no 16-pin power cables required. So this is an interesting one. I personally don't care anymore because I do have an ATX 3.0 PCIe 5 power supply. I've done the unboxing video on it. I've shown how it works, and I've connected it to the 3090 Ti. So I am of the opinion that if an AIB partner wants to take the gamble and put the 16-pin power cable on their 7900 XTX, I'm totally cool with that. But I am definitely of the minority when I say that, because I do think that most people do not have a power supply that natively has that 16-pin power cable, and would rather have dual 8-pin or even triple 8-pin. More compact than a 4080, so that means it's more compatible with different sized cases, particularly smaller ones. Support for the DisplayPort 2.1 and HDMI 2.1. That's really good if you're going to drive an 8K monitor. But realistically, if you're using an 8K monitor, you're probably using that for media or productivity. You're probably not going to be using that for gaming because it's kind of a meme at this point. It was a meme 2 years ago when the 3090 launched and NVIDIA tried to, market that as an 8K GPU, and that was kind of a big failure. But it's still kind of a big failure today. So, the 8K thing doesn't really matter right now. Yeah. So that one, but what's cool about the DisplayPort 2.1 isn't so much the 8K stuff. It's the fact that you get the full 444 color space instead of like chroma subsampled, 420 or those sort of things. For people who do not know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. You probably don't have a super high-end display that, regardless of whether it's 4K or something better, like 5K monitor or whatever. Support for AV1, hardware encode decode. Now, I mean, I assumed that this was going to be a thing just because, like, Intel and NVIDIA launched this earlier with the, ARC has it, the 40 series has it. So, I kind of assumed that AMD would have it too. So I never doubted that for a second. I mean, and here it is, it's there. And Epos Vox did say some pretty positive comments about the hardware encoder this time around, so that's really good to see. You only care about 1440p right now? Well, I mean, this GPU I don't really think is meant for 1440p. You could use it with 1440p, and it would be really, really good, especially with ray tracing, but I kind of think it's really meant for 4K myself. Yeah, so the DisplayPort 2.1 makes sense for not so much gaming, at least not today, but for productivity it does make sense. And for professional use it definitely makes sense. So the 5 nanometer production process, so basically the same TSMC one that everyone else is using now except for Intel. I mean Intel CPUs, because Intel's Arc is also made on this 5 nanometer process. And then the world's first chiplet GPU. So this is an interesting thing. So in my mind, I was kind of assuming, not really hoping, I was assuming that AMD would provide a PCI Gen 5 GPU so they could claim world's first. Now we all know that didn't happen, so some GPU in China managed to claim world's first PCI 5, but who cares, because it's only as good as like a 3060. And then there's the chiplet. So world's first chiplet GPU. This is more kind of a big deal, because it now, this is kind of the evolution of AMD's, what they originally did with the R9 Fury and the R9 Fury X back in 2015. They had HBM on an interposer right next to the GPU die. That was kind of the first generation, or the first iteration of this approach to manufacturing silicon processor type devices, so in this case a GPU. So they carry that over to Ryzen with Zen 2. They had the chiplets on Ryzen, and then we all know that in the servers, EPYC also uses that. And then now they have finally refined the process further, and they brought it back to the GPUs. Instead of using HBM, which is extremely expensive, they still use the GDDR6, but they're able to leverage those MCDs on the sides. Like there's like 3 on each side of the actual GPU die. So the total die, it's a relatively big space, but it's split up into 6 smaller dies on each side, 3 on each side of the GPU die, and then you have a smaller die in the middle, as opposed to one big monolithic die, which is what you have on the 4090. So that's good, because that will increase yields, and it will also reduce the overall BOM cost. So that's really cool that they have that now on the GPU side. Quake 2 RTX should run 1440p, 100 FPS. I mean, I think so. Like, do you know offhand what the Quake 2 RTX is on the 3090 Ti? Because based off of the reviews that I was looking at today, the ray tracing on the 7900 XTX is basically 3090 Ti's level. If not, worst case, it's more like 3090's ray tracing level. But that's kind of what I've concluded from looking at a bunch of reviews. So the cons, or the negative things based off of the review from Tech Power Up: considerably lower ray tracing performance than the 4080. We all kind of already knew this. It's basically 30 series ray tracing. Fan noise is somewhat on the high side. This is compared to the last generation reference coolers. So the 6900 XT was incredibly quiet. I think at full load the dBm was like 27 dB or something like that, or 27 dBm. or dB was the sound. dBA, dB I think decibel. But yeah, so the noise is higher because the fans are now spinning at like 1600 RPM as opposed to 1100 RPM on the 6900 XT. So it's noisier, but you know it's still sub 2000 RPM, so it's still not loud by any means. You can hear it, but it's not like terribly distracting. So, and this is the reference card we're talking about. Not exactly cheap. I will agree there. I think this is the reason. I think this con is probably the biggest thing that I kind of. It causes a lot of the consumers, gamers, all the above to basically kind of see this launch as somewhat lackluster, just like the 4080 launch. It's kind of disappointing because it's $1,000 and $900 is still a lot of money for a GPU. Most people even the people who traditionally buy like the 3080 class of GPU, typically doesn't expect to spend over $700. So the fact that not only are the NVIDIA ones sort of out of reach, now the AMD ones are also out of reach. So it's like they don't really have a good alternative from Team Red. So that's really kind of disappointing. So that's why it says not exactly cheap. What do you think overall about the 7900 XTX? I think I would say that anybody who is on a 2080 Ti should strongly, or I guess anyone who's on a 20 series NVIDIA card, or anything that's older than AMD's 6000 series, and if they either have a 4K monitor or they're planning to get a 4K monitor within the next 6 months to a year, or at the very least on a 1440p monitor, should strongly, and they're thinking about upgrading, should strongly consider the 7900 XTX, because you're getting a lot of value considering the alternatives from NVIDIA, as well as the previous generation alternatives from both AMD and NVIDIA. So I think it's definitely worth considering if you're on RTX 20 series, for example, or like the 5700 XT from AMD. That GPU is like 3.5 years old now, just about. And anything older than that. So, like Fury, Vega 64, Radeon 7, all of those, any of those GPUs, this was definitely worth considering. And the reason why I'm listing those GPUs specifically, like the Radeon 7, the 2080 Ti, it's because those GPUs were already really expensive when they launched. So, like for example, the 2080 Ti was $1,200 for the Founders Edition. So you can imagine like the AIBs were around $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, somewhere around there. Basically, they were priced like what the 4080 is priced now. So if you want 24 gigabytes of memory, as opposed to the 11 that are on the 2080 Ti, and you're willing to spend that kind of money, and remember, it's now, that GPU was from 2018, so it's like it's more than 4 years old because it was like September or August of 2018. Considering how old that GPU is, you're basically getting slightly more than double your memory, and you're getting way better rasterization performance, and you're getting way better ray tracing performance for less money than what you paid 4 years ago for the 2080 Ti. Now with Radeon 7 was February 7th, 2019 was the launch day, and that was $700. And it had 16 gigabytes of HBM2, but it was extremely loud. It was only available as a reference card. So if you're okay with spending, $1,000 for something that's way better in all aspects than Radeon 7, then yeah, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. The price for the 700 XTX will push people together to get... Why would the price of the 7900 XTX push people to get the 4080? Please explain that, because I don't understand the logic there. I think I kind of see what you're saying, but I don't really know if that's going to work for everybody. Like, you're kind of generalizing. I think what you're trying to say is that because someone who's capable of spending $1,000 on a GPU, they're able to spend $200 more somehow. Like, there's an assumption there that they would be willing to spend $200 more for the 4080, even though the 4080 is actually worse. So I don't really know how that's a strong argument. Like, I don't really know, like, what... There's only two things in my mind that make the 4080 seem like it has some kind of spell that it can cast on people to buy it, as opposed to the 7900 XTX. One thing is the ray tracing, because it's like, okay, yeah, it's better at ray tracing. But again, that is very use case specific. Not that many games use ray tracing. And how many people weigh ray tracing? It's like the average gamer, like, how much do they actually care about ray tracing? Like, if they're prioritizing things on a GPU, like, where does that weigh in, right? So, and the other thing too is, you got to remember, like, why would you spend $200 more for a graphics card that has 16 gigabytes of memory, as to opposed to a graphics card that's $200 less and has 24 gigabytes of memory? Like, I don't really know how that's good. I don't see the argument there in favor of the 4080. I think it's the other way around. You had the 6700 XT for 2 weeks, but you were overall a bit disappointed with the performance. I had a lot of stutters and it didn't perform as expected, so I sent it back. I don't know if I got unlucky or what happened. Most people that care about ray tracing are people that play games like Minecraft. Really? I mean, is it really people who play like those type of games that care about it? Because that's not what you see in reviews, right? Like, most of the tech media never talks about Minecraft RTX. And they rarely ever talk about Quake 2 RTX either. I feel like the only time you ever see those games brought up is when a new product is getting ready to launch. Like, for example, Portal 2 or Portal RTX. Portal RTX. NVIDIA was the first one to debut that because they kind of wanted to show off ray tracing on the 40 series. But when you saw the reviews of the 4090, nobody was talking about Minecraft. No one was talking about Quake 2. No one was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, all the typical Gamers Nexus, LTT, Hardware Unboxed. None of them were talking about that. Like, even Paul, Jay, like, it's because those are the only games that look a lot better than vanilla Minecraft. I guess. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, Minecraft RTX it's cool. It does look good. But I don't know if that's what people who put a lot on ray tracing in terms of priority. I don't know if it's the Minecraft crowd. I don't really see it. I mean, maybe I'm uninformed about that, but I kind of think that yeah, Portal RTX doesn't even look better. See, what I find interesting is when people always talk about ray tracing, I want to know, like, what are their top 5 games that they're playing on PC. I want to see, like, their list, their Steam list, because if they're not, if at least 60% of those games are not ray tracing games, I don't really think that they're weighing the priorities correctly. Also, I don't know if 7900 XTX will be bottlenecked by my PC. I have DDR4 memory, 850 watt. No, it'll be fine. With a 5900X, it'll be fine. I mean, like, I think Tech Power Up, I think they reviewed it with like a 5800 or something, and it was fine. NVIDIA's features DLSS ray tracing, quieter card for just $200 extra. I mean, DLSS is basically FSR. Ray tracing is okay. Ray tracing, yeah, but again, I want to know the games that you're playing that will actually use ray tracing, because it depends, right? Like, if you play a bunch of games that don't even offer ray tracing, then what's the point? Like, let me just kind of read some of the games that I have. So, Neo 2, Elden Ring. I'm waiting for Crisis Core tomorrow. Scarlet Nexus, Star Ocean: The Divine Force. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Tokyo Xanadu, Ys 9, Monstrum Nox. None of these games that I've just listed on my library have ray tracing at all. So it depends on the use case. It's like, yeah, I have Quake 2 RTX, but I only really use that for benchmarking. I'm not going to actually be playing that like in my free time, if that makes sense. So it depends. It depends on the use case. Like how much you value ray tracing at the end of the day depends on, do you actually play the games that actually use ray tracing? Because games like League of Legends don't count. Minecraft RTX, Quake 2, Spider-Man Remastered, Ghostwire Tokyo, Teardown, Control are the best ray tracing visuals. Yeah, and of that entire list that you just listed, I literally only have one of those games, and it's Quake 2. I don't have Control, I don't have Ghostwire Tokyo, I don't have Spider-Man Remastered. But isn't the ray tracing decent on this? Yes, it is. It's guys, it's 3090 Ti level ray tracing. It's not even bad. Like, people who are saying that it's bad, what are they talking about? Like, is somehow ray tracing on 30 series all of a sudden bad? It was never bad. For some reason, I feel like when I read comments talking about this stuff, like, it's almost like there's some kind of what's the word? Cognitive dissonance? It's almost like there's some kind of level of cognitive dissonance in the general gamer, like the public mind, when it comes to these features on these graphics cards. So, in my mind, like, this is what I would rate, or what I look for if I'm buying a GPU. High VRAM, so I want a lot of RAM. It has to be quiet. So there was a comment earlier saying that it's the $200 more for a quieter GPU. That really depends on what card you're looking at. So if you're talking about, again, AIBs are going to be different. So one AIB card might be louder than the other. So I mean, that's kind of, weird point to bring up. So yeah, in terms of the reference card, so yes, the 7900 XTX reference is louder than the 4080, but it's not like it's super loud or anything like that. 1600 RPM is basically, I won't say it's whisper quiet, but it's relatively quiet. Like, you're not really going to notice it. Anything above 2000 or 2100 RPM is where you'll definitely notice the noise. So 1600 RPM is not terrible. Honestly, right now, I don't think I'll get the 3080. I will go for this. I mean, yeah. It depends. Like, what is the price in Europe, though? If it's probably going to be like the equivalent of $1,100. So whatever $1,100 in euros, I would expect that to be kind of the price in Europe. Some of the 4080 and 4090 had bad coil whine. Yeah, and that just kind of depends, right? There's a lot of variance there with coil whine. It's very hard to evaluate a product on something like coil whine, because you might get one that has a noisier inductor and one that's quieter than the other one. So it's, I don't know. You could get variance even within the same GPU model. Like, for example, you could get a Founders Edition 4080 that has terrible coil whine, and you can get another Founders Edition 4080 that doesn't have terrible coil whine. So that's kind of like very random. So it kind of sucks when you get one that does have bad coil whine. Because there's like very few things you can do other than trying to RMA it. But some AIB vendors might reject the RMA on the basis of coil whine, because they might say that it's not a defect, it's kind of expected behavior due to variances in the components. So, is it possible to get it from AMD on release? I think so. I assume it will be. I don't know 100% about that, though. I remember back when the 6000 series launched, back in 2020, it literally sold out on AMD's website like within 10 seconds. Like, bots, scalpers, it was just bam, gone like that, like super fast. Same thing with Best Buy. It was the same story with the 30 series at launch. So I don't know if we're going to have that exact same problem this time around, because mining is not really a thing right now, and AMD doesn't have nearly as much mind share, as we just talked about cognitive dissonance and how people somehow just think NVIDIA is better just because of mind share reasons. I don't think AMD will probably have that same problem. My concern with AMD's launch isn't so much bots and scalpers. It's more so the supply itself. Will AMD actually have decent supply at launch? Because NVIDIA did have decent launch or decent supply at launch compared to the 30 series, and that's the reason why you had like 4080s that sat on the shelf at Micro Center throughout the first day of launch. And then like the 4090 also took hours to sell out at most retail outlets. So it's not like the 4090 was gone instantly. Now I think online, the 4090 did sell out pretty quick. Like Best Buy, I think it was up for like 10 to 20 minutes. You could get one in the first 10 to 20 minutes, and then it was gone. Then it literally like legit sold out. But from what I remember with the 4080 launch, it kind of never really sold out. Like Best Buy didn't really list it until later, and then it was there for online only, and then it was gone after like 2 or 3 hours. And then the Micro Center stock was in stock pretty much for like several days. Like even up until Black Friday, there was 4080s in Micro Centers all over the place. So if AMD's 7900 XTX can be stocked similarly to the 4090 or the 4080, then I think it'll be relatively easy to get one this time around. At least I hope so, because if it's not, we'll see. But I do kind of think that the supply on AMD's GPUs will not be as good as NVIDIA. I just think that since there's less people that are looking to buy an AMD GPU in general, hopefully that will kind of even out with the NVIDIA launch in terms of the price, or in terms of the availability, I should say. Go Scoot. Yeah, what's going on? We're just talking about tomorrow's launch. Well, I mean, the reviews are out. We were looking at one review here. But in general, I think it's pretty solid. I don't really see anything wrong with it. It received editor's choice on Tech Power Up. It says here, AMD Radeon 7900 XTX will be available for sale tomorrow, both made by AMD boards and custom designs will be available. So that's interesting. That's the first I've actually heard of that. So that means maybe you could get an AIB card at Micro Center. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't know if that's true, because one thing I noticed is that you can't actually see, unlike the NVIDIA launch, they don't actually show any options here. Like they showed like Strix and Supreme and all this other stuff, the Zotac on the NVIDIA one, but they're not showing anything like that on the AMD one, which is weird. You got the Tai Chi. I didn't build it yet, waiting on all the parts. Trying to find where it is on AMD to buy it. It's not going to show up on AMD yet. So for AMD, you'd go to amd.com, and then you would go to right here, buy on amd.com. And you're not going to see it right now because obviously it's not launched, so it's not going to show up. But when they do go up for sale tomorrow, it should appear on this page. So you probably want to bookmark whatever country you're in, amd.com/ and then whatever the language would be. This is EN English / direct - buy / and then it'll be like a country prefix. So in this case, this one's the US. But that's how you would do it. So, yeah, this is where you would go to buy it direct from AMD. Same page from like 2 years ago when they launched the 6000 series. But yeah, Newegg. Let's see if I can accidentally get Newegg to show these listings. They're probably not going to do it. No, see, it doesn't show up yet. Okay, wait, maybe this one. No. Okay, so They're not showing it yet. They don't actually have it listed, but it'll go up for sale tomorrow. Same thing with this. I don't understand why. So if they really are going to sell AIBs, then I'm surprised that you can't see them on Micro Center site, because Micro Center had the one for NVIDIA. It's not there anymore, obviously, but they did have it. Stores open at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. What GPU pin connector I need for the... Because it's 3. You just need the 8-pin PCIe connector. That's all you need. You need 3 separate plugs to the power supply. Here in Sweden? Oh, okay, you're in Sweden. By tomorrow, you mean it will appear on the site? So tomorrow, no. I think. So hold on. Let me look it up real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Because I'm pretty sure, like, Sweden is that Central European time, or is that 1 hour behind? No, that should be Central European time. That's the same as like Milan and those cities in Italy, right? Yeah, Central European. So that means I think I can find it for you. Hold on, I need to find the where is it? How do I add? Oh wait. Like if I do Stockholm is so hold on, let me do the conversion. Because I think it's gonna be so, like, look at this. This one is saying 9 a.m. Eastern. So 9 a.m. Eastern. I think it's gonna be like 3 in the afternoon, Central European time. I think so. So basically, take this time, 9 a.m. Eastern, and add, add like 6 hours to it. So it should be like 3 p.m. I think that's the time. But I don't know. I don't know if it's different for different regions. I think it's like a blanket launch hour, though. But I could be wrong. You might want to also check with one of the local retailers. Like, if you can. Just either call one of them up or do the online chat for one of the local retailers, or whoever you plan to buy the GPU from. That's what I would do. Just to check, like, when will it be available when the store opens, or if not, then will they be able to sell it, in the afternoon? That's what I would ask. I mean, I actually went to Best Buy earlier today, this morning, to ask them if they'll have it. So look, Best Buy is in the US, and they told me that as far as they know, they're not going to have it. But they said if they do have it, it will be online only, and it'll be in-store pickup. So they're not going to ship it to you. But you can place the order on the website, but then you actually have to go to the store to get it, which is kind of weird, but in a way it makes sense because they're trying to stop people from scalping and buying it, because if they're going to limit one per customer, you have to actually go to a store. They're not going to ship it to an address. So you can't buy like 5 of them and have them go to like 5 different addresses. Because that's what scalpers were doing. Do you think the Ryzen 5700X is fine for a mini ITX small? Yeah, Ryzen 5000 in general doesn't really use that much power. Like, it's super energy efficient, even compared to the newer AM5 CPUs, and of course, like the Intel 13th gen. The Ryzen stuff, the 5000 series is really energy efficient. I mean, I wouldn't worry about putting like a 5900X or a 5950X in there if it was me. Because I think they only cap out at like 130 watts or something, like a full load on that, and I'm talking like 16 core. So, but yeah, this it is kind of weird. So like this, they say that that's. Hold on, let's find. Where is it?
RDNA.
Okay, so I wanna kind of put this one here. Let me move this over. How can I do this? It's still an 8-core 16-thread like the. Yeah, no, but it's the fact that it's less TDP. It's even more energy efficient. But let's see. So let's do this. Because this is an interesting video. I guess we'll
What
just...
streamers and content creators have been waiting for, so they can stop using NVIDIA. Finally. I'm not sure I think so. Unfortunately, this is not a full review.
Let me go to the part where he does something interesting here. He puts like 6... He gets like 6 streams going. So he talks about the AV1 encoder on the dual media engine. So these things... So these new AMD cards have the dual media engine. Just like the RTX 4090 does. And then he also says, like right here, he gets to the part where he's got like 6 different streams going concurrently. Or something like that. Where is it at? Yeah, like right here. He basically maxes out the CPU, even though he isn't even doing CPU encoding. He's doing GPU encoding, but he's got like 6 different streams going all at the same time, to the point where it's like the GPU is encoding 6 different streams, but the CPU is still having to, you know, provide the communication between like the data feed to the GPUs. It's like it can't keep up and it isn't even doing any encoding. That's what's hilarious about it. So maybe this is the reason why NVIDIA limited it to 3, but I don't know. Like that's interesting to see. See, he was able to queue up 6 encode sessions, 4 1080p AV1 encodes to max out the chip. So what's cool about this is you can see it's got like a. Let me see what happens if I do that. That kind of full screens it. That's not kind of what I wanted to do. Let's do theater mode. Does that make it better? Okay, so you can see what's cool about this is this graphics card, the 7900 XT, has video codec 0 and video codec 1. Normally, when you look in Task Manager at your GPU, you really only have 1. You're supposed to only have like 1. So that's kind of interesting how it shows 2 different things. It's still got the 3D, it's got the high priority 3D, so that's different. I mean, that's the same, but it has like video codec 0 and video codec 1. So he queues up all these 1080p streams. And now if you're trying to do this on a 4090, you can't do this, because the 4090 will only do, he said in the video, up to 3 encode sessions. Like NVIDIA caps it out at 3, whereas AMD technically doesn't actually have a cap, which means, what I found interesting about this is this means that if you're running this GPU on a server, like an AMD EPYC CPU, something that has like a ton of cores, like, you know, a 64-core, 128 thread Threadripper CPU, or not Threadripper, EPYC server CPU, or whatever Intel's Xeon Dual you would pair this up with, like you could probably just keep on cranking out more encodes. However, I think it's pretty close to the max, right? So codec 0 looks like it's already fully capped out, and then codec 1, realistically, you could probably do another, maybe 1 or 2 more encodes, maybe 8 encode sessions with a server-grade CPU, so you're no longer CPU limited. But at that point, the GPU is then going to be limited because the codecs are basically full, so, or at full utilization. So that's really interesting. That means that they have done a lot of different things with the media engine this time around. And then he did say that the quality of the visual on the new OBS is... He mentions like using speed as opposed to high quality. There's speed, quality, and high quality. He was saying that high quality doesn't work with the full 4K 60 stream, but it works in the other ones like 1080p. But you know, like nobody really streams at 4K, so in real time. So I mean, YouTube doesn't really want you to do that. So it kind of maxes out at 1080p. So that's interesting, but it is worth noting. But that's cool to see. I'll definitely do more. I've been wanting to do some videos about Intel Arc A770, but currently the encoder with OBS isn't really implemented with Intel, at least the last time I checked. It does feature this for, well, obviously here with AMD, but with RTX 4090 it's there. So you can do like the AV1 video recording using AV1 on NVIDIA, and according to this, you can do it with AMD. But for some reason, you still can't do it with Intel Arc. I don't know why, but that's just kind of how it is right now. So that's cool. I found this video very interesting because this was kind of something that a lot of people were complaining about from a productivity side. They wanted AMD to put more effort into improving the media engine that actually is on board the GPU. So that's really good to see. So they made a lot of improvements there, so that's good. And then I guess reviews. Let's go look at hardware unbox briefly. Let's look at them. So let's see. Let's kind of skip through here.
Yeah, the CPU.
So Watchdog Legions 4K. I don't even know if this has. Some of these games will have ray tracing. We'll kind of look through that. You're going to sleep? Yeah, you got it. I mean, thanks for stopping by. I'm glad that I could have helped at least clear some confusion on some of these GPUs. Watch Dogs does have ray tracing? Okay, just see, that shows how much I care about ray tracing because I don't even know which games actually offer it. Callisto Protocol. So this is the new game that I think just came out, and it's free if you, or it's bundled with the 6000 series RDNA 2 GPUs. So, but you can kind of see, like, it is right where AMD said when they told people in the review samples that it was basically like the 4080, and it's not really meant to compete with the 4090. So you can kind of see how it compares here. Assassin's Creed. And then I think these guys were testing it with a Ryzen CPU. I can't remember. I think they use it with a Ryzen CPU. I think, oh yeah, that's right. Hardware Unbox was interesting because they actually benchmarked using the 5800X3D CPU. So they're using like Zen 3 to review these GPUs. Whereas I think most other reviewers used either the 7950X, like Paul used the 7950X, and Jay, I don't remember what he used. I know Phil did the review, but I forgot what the test system was using. I assume it was either using like the 12900K or maybe the 7950X, or maybe it was the 13th gen. I don't know. I forget if anybody actually used 13th gen with this thing. But yeah, see, like they used the 7950X. Wait, no, did they? No. I know they used the 5800X3D. Let me see.
As the GCD is still relatively large compared to a CPU, but at 300 millimeters squared, it's still half that of 80.
Oh, well, the reason why this is shown, he's talking about how the die size is relatively small because of the chiplets.
And just 60% as large as not.
But yeah, okay, here it is. See, so they tested with a 5800X3D with rebar on because obviously you would run rebar on. There's no reason to have it off. And then he is using the exact same power supply that I have, the one that I did the unboxing and review on. So that's good to see. The only game the 7900 XTX beat the 4090. Yeah, but you know it's not supposed to win. It's not supposed to win. So the fact that it actually won is kind of interesting. So it was never intended to win against it. Yeah, there's Modern Warfare 2. So 311, man. But AMD has always done well in Call of Duty. Look at the 6950 XT. The 6950 XT is very close to the 4080. And the 3090 Ti is lower than the 6800 XT. So AMD has always performed very, very good in Call of Duty. Because it's a console port? I don't know about that. I mean, there's a lot of console ports that don't actually really favor either one. So I think that's maybe, but I don't really think so. So Hitman here, 163 at 4K. I'm glad that they're doing 4K first, because I personally don't care about the 1440p, and I especially don't care about the 1080p. In fact, do they even do 1080p? Good, they didn't even do 1080p, because it's pointless. If you have a 1080p monitor, you shouldn't be buying this GPU. You shouldn't even be buying the 4080 either. Like, that's a waste of money at that resolution. So, did they even do it? No. Okay, so here's what's interesting. So, RT. So, RT off. AMD's doing 216. NVIDIA's doing 191. And then when you turn ray tracing on, plus the super sampling, so DLSS and FSR, AMD's doing 121 and NVIDIA's doing 110. And then if you just do pure ray tracing without the super sampling, you're getting 56 on AMD and you're getting 64 on the 4080. So again, see, like that to me. So look, here's the 3090 Ti. 3090 Ti is doing 55, and AMD is doing 56. This is the reason why I was saying earlier that the ray tracing performance of the 7900 XTX isn't really bad, considering it's basically like the 3090 Ti. So, and this is just the pure ray tracing. This is F1. Now, if we look at Watch Dogs, so 44 on ray tracing Ultra, and look at what it is on the 3090 Ti. 44 on ray tracing Ultra. It's exactly the same as the 3090 Ti. This one doesn't offer FSR, so you get DLSS, but you don't get FSR on Watch Dogs Legion. Path tracing is much more demanding than something like F1. F1 is mostly raster. Okay, and then Marvel.
Moving on to Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy.
So here, like, again, 62 and 53. So here the 3090 Ti is a little bit ahead, but I think in this game, the 3090 Ti does really well, because look at the RT off, it's 128. So Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Neck and neck with 140
ray tracing, let's go to Dying Light. So here, see, again, 27 on the 3090 Ti, 27 on the AMD, the XTX card. So again, like I'm saying, the ray tracing, it tracks pretty well with a 3090 Ti. But yeah, if I can manage to get one of these for review, I will definitely look at Quake 2 RTX. That's probably like the first thing I do with this graphics card, is probably look at Quake 2 RTX on here, on the 700 XTX. I'm gonna try to get one, so we'll see. Like I said earlier, I'm gonna pair it up with a 13th gen. So for those wondering, we are on the 13th gen right now, streaming with the 6900 XT. Plus, the image is better on the AMD. Yeah, it does default to the 10-bit if the monitor supports it. You don't have to do anything in the control panel. And the 444, the full RGB range, it does default to that. And I think part of that is because it does less color compression than NVIDIA. So if you have a really, really good display, like a 10-bit color display, it does look, the colors look really, really good. The wide color gamut monitors look really, really good on the Radeon cards. So yeah, that is something that I think Tech Yes City investigated a number of years ago, but that was a long time ago when he looked into that. That was back when like Doom Eternal like first came out. And I think back then the flagships were maybe, I think he did the comparison with the RX 480 and the GTX 1060. or maybe it was somewhere around that time frame. That's how long ago that was. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit better, a little bit deeper color on AMD. Although I do think Intel Arc does oversaturate the colors as well, so which was very interesting. But I think they kind of overdo it.
The ray tracing preset forces DirectX 12, and this seems
Let's see, Dying Light. Is there anything else I want to point out here? But see, this is why I'm saying, like, 30 series ray tracing is basically where these 7000 series GPUs are. And when I say 30 series, I'm talking about the flagship, the previous flagship from NVIDIA, the 3090 Ti. The 7900 XTX tracks very well with that card's performance. I mean, even if you look here, FSR2 quality and DLSS quality, again, 3090 Ti 48, AMD 49. So again, even with DLSS and FSR2, it tracks well when those features are available, right? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely good. And then if you're looking at rasterization, the rasterization on AMD is better than the RTX 30 series. Obviously, it should be because this is a next generation GPU. So honestly, I do think it's good. Like, this is one though that NVIDIA does do really well in. Like 132 on the 4080 is really, really good. That's a massive leap over the 3090 Ti. So, which is really weird considering 3090 Ti is really not that much better than the 6950 XT. And it has way more teraflops. So that kind of makes Ampere look bad in my mind. Because considering that GPU was very expensive.
5% slower than the RTX 4080. But so in terms
of... So
of
power consumption, this is another thing that I want to look at. So I'm not sure what makes them choose the games that they choose to show the power consumption. I don't know if they're doing like worst case or best case or however they do this. But they chose Dying Light 2 Stay Human at 4K high. And the 4080, 400, just over 400 watts. The AMD card, 468 watts. So, you know, that's like, what, 64 watts more power? So the AMD card does use more, but I think it was rated at 355 watts. And typically they track really close to their TDP. What do you think about the game clock being said to be 2500 megahertz when AMD then said it was... They said the same thing with the 6000 series. I don't really think anything of it because the boost always is higher. Like, it's the same thing with last generation. Like, there's nothing surprising there. Like, I expected it to be 20, 25, 26. Like, I think Paul, in his review, he saw his go over 3 gigahertz. When he set the boost, he just moved the slider all the way up and increased the power limit, and he was getting like 3 gigahertz on the peak. But it was very, like if you were to plot out on a chart, like it fluctuates a lot, but he would see it go over 3 gigahertz. So, yeah. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm not surprised at all by the boost clocks being higher than or the game clock being higher than what AMD said, because that to me is normal expected behavior. What's interesting there though is the AIB partner cards will probably give you better boost behavior, longer duration at higher clock speed compared to AMD's reference card. And the main reason why they're going to do that is because AMD's reference card is a dual 8-pin. I think we're going to see a lot of AIB cards that have triple 8-pin. So they're going to be more like the 4080. Because remember, guys, the 4080 is a triple 8-pin graphics card using that adapter. And the 4090 is a quad. It's got 4 of them, 4 8-pin. So AMD can go up to 3 8-pin, and it's still roughly going to be like the 4080. But yeah, in terms of the power consumption, it's more than the 4080, but it's like not like it's a whole lot more. Like the 4090 is 522 here in this particular game. And all of these make the 3090 Ti look terrible at 651 watts. So, yeah, that looks pretty terrible. And if you look at AMD's previous flagship, the 6950 XT was very, very close to the 4090 power consumption, 514 to 522. So AMD is more efficient, but it's like not like super more efficient, if that makes sense. compared to their previous generation. Like it's less power, but it's like not that much less power. You're talking like 40, 50 watts less, a little more than 50 watts less. So, but that's good. I mean, but it's not like super duper impressive by any means.
We also see that power
So
consumption.
total system power consumption. So this is what I find more interesting. So this is at the wall. They're running Doom at 4K Ultra. And I will add that if you're planning to pair this up with a 1440p monitor, or God forbid a 1080p monitor, you're never going to see power consumption this high, because that resolution is too small. The number of pixels is so small that the GPU will just kind of like flick its wrist and just be like throwing out like hundreds of frames while not even heating up. Whereas with 4K, there's like way more pixels on the screen, so it actually has to do work to put push pixels out to the screen. So that's why you're going to see this worst case power consumption numbers here tested at 4K. So you can see, it's roughly in line with 4080 and maybe 3090. You can kind of see where it kind of falls there. So it's really like the 3080 Ti in terms of power, but it performs way better than the 40 or the 3080 Ti, and it's less than the previous flagship. So overall, I mean, it's a little bit more efficient. We're talking like 22 watts just by looking at this one game and its measurement. Of course, there's gonna be some variance in there with different games, but overall, that's decent. I would say it's not terrible. You're not getting like 3090 Ti did like 666 in terms of power consumption there.
Between the 4080
And the fact that that's Doom, that's kind of hilarious.
700 XTX was
I don't really know why it uses that much power. It's like supposed to be a 450 watt TDP card, but it's pulling that much for the whole system.
Then we have
So
Hitman 3 and again the 4080 and 700 XTX.
cost per frame,
time for the
4K.
all-important
So
cost
here
per
we go. Here's the other thing too, because there were some comments earlier talking about, like there was a comment earlier that said that the AMD card is just going to push people to buy the 4080. I don't really know why it would do that, considering really the only advantage the 4080 has is, like I just showed, it's slightly less power, and it has better ray tracing performance. So for people that really, really value ray tracing, then I guess, okay, that does kind of have some merit in that argument, but the fact that it's only $200 more, I'd probably buy a 2 terabyte NVMe drive with the AMD card than just buy the NVIDIA card by itself. So, that extra $200 can be put to something else. In my case, I'm probably going to buy storage with that extra $200. Or I would just keep the $200 and, save money that way. So, cost per frame, AMD wins surprisingly, with that 16 game average. It's actually better than the 6800 XT. Now, I do think that this equation changes if you consider the sale price of like 550 or 500, or I guess about 550 for the 6800 XT. Then I do think that becomes the value king, which would put that card in first place on this chart. But for the way it is right now, with the average MSRP, the AMD card is basically the best value, which is really, really weird considering it's $1,000. Yeah, see, exactly. You could just use the $200 for something else, as opposed to having to just throw that at a GPU. So, I mean, this is an interesting review. What else we got here? Cost per frame.
By the time you see this.
See, I had a feeling that these GPUs, yeah, see, just like I said earlier, like, if you consider the sale price, the 6800 and the 6800 XT move ahead of the 7900 XTX. So here, it really boils down to the budget and the monitor resolution. If you're at 1440p, I really do kind of think that the 6800 XT is the value king. But if you're at 4K, then I would still opt for the 7900 XTX over the 6800 XT, unless I was budget constrained, and I know a lot of people can be, so that is still a valid argument. However, when you look at these numbers, like 113 versus like 70 at 4K for a 16 game average, you're paying what, like $1.10 more, just about. You know, it's one of those things. If you're really at 4K, then the 7900 XTX really makes a lot more sense over these cheaper offerings. But again, it's going to come down to individual use case and budget and the monitor that you're on. For 4K, this makes sense. For 1440p, the 6800 XT makes more sense. And then for 1080p, I guess the 6800. But yeah, I guess the 6800. Cooling. So let's see.
The AMD Radeon RX.
So here he's showing 1855 RPM.
After an hour of gameplay.
So, and he's running at 80 on the hotspot, 67 on the temp. Like, honestly, I would rather, well, I mean, these are good temps. These are good temps in my mind, considering what we've been conditioned to be used to now, looking at the 13900K and the Ryzen 7000 CPUs. These are excellent temps just compared to those CPUs. But, you know, fan at 1800, like, I'm surprised they went with a more aggressive fan profile. I feel like it's always a balancing act with these new products, because I feel like with the previous reviews, with AMD's 6000 series, the criticism they got was, oh, the card is so whisper quiet, but now the hotspot's like 90C. So it's like, the reviewers would say, oh, I wish AMD would have made the default fan profile run a little bit faster so that the temps would be lower. Well, here they've gone and done that. Now we're seeing 67 Celsius, but 1800 RPM, as opposed to, I think it was like 80 Celsius and 90 Celsius fan, hotspot at like 1200 RPM on the 6900 XT, like back when that card was new. I personally would opt for the higher temp, lower noise. So, but again, 1800 RPM, that's a decent fan speed. That's not super loud. Like that's kind of, I mean, I think it's audible. If you go right next to your computer case and you stick your ear like right up against the case, you're gonna hear the fan. But if you're like, if you're like me and you have it on the floor, so mine, the case is on the floor, like away from me under the desk, like this is gonna be totally fine. Like 1800 RPM, I won't really notice it, especially considering I'm wearing headphones. So, but it's not loud. Like, in order for me to hear the GPU while wearing headphones and while gaming, the fan has to be close to 3000 RPMs. Just to give people an idea, it has to be like Radeon 7. Radeon 7 runs at 2900 RPM stock. That, in my book, is way too loud. It's unacceptably loud. But 1800 RPM is okay, considering most blower style coolers are operating around 2400, 2600 RPM. So this is still not terrible. And these are axial fans, so the noise profile won't be terrible. So that's good. But I would prefer this to be like 1500 RPM and give me a hotter, give me like 87 hotspot, 75 temp stock profile, and I think that would be better. But that's because I would rather take higher temps and lower noise than lower temps and more noise. But again, it depends on the person, right? So, but this is not terrible. 1800 RPM is not terrible, and this is like kind of worst case, because I think Gamers Nexus was like 1700 or 1600 RPM. So yeah. Was there anything else I wanted to show here? I guess 16 game average. So yeah, I mean it ekes out a win against the 4080 while costing less money and giving you 4 gigabytes more RAM. So in my mind, this thing's better. Like, because of this card, I'll literally never consider the 4080 ever. Like, I'm basically gonna skip that entire generation. The 4090 maybe, but you know, like $1,600 is kind of like, that's the price of most people's entire system build. So hard to justify that. And the AMD card has the same amount of memory. So yeah, to me, the AMD card makes more sense. So hopefully they have good supply for tomorrow. But we will definitely, if I can get my hands on one from Micro Center tomorrow, I plan to do a lot of testing. I'm going to do a live stream with the graphics card. I'm going to do an unboxing video if I can get one, so you can expect to see that on the channel tomorrow. And then I will give my thoughts on the cooler design. I'll compare it to some older GPUs that I have on hand. And then we're going to pair it up with the Intel 13900K and probably play some games. Basically what we did with the Intel Arc GPU, we're going to do the same thing with the AMD Radeon GPU. So we'll test some games and see how it performs in streaming. We're going to use the AMD encoder when I stream, so it's going to be streaming off of that as opposed to the CPU encoder, which is what we did with the Intel Arc. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. So the reviews are out, so if you guys are on the fence, I personally think that this GPU makes the most sense, but $1,000 is a lot of money, and I know a lot of people still would refuse to spend that much money on a graphics card, and that's the reason why the general public isn't really happy with the NVIDIA 40 series, because they think that they've been shafted and it's too expensive. And I totally understand that. I kind of agree that all of it's way too much money. But this one at $1,000 is kind of the new like upper limit that a flagship can potentially cost, considering that the original NVIDIA Titan, the Kepler-based Titan from NVIDIA, did retail for $1,000 back in 2013. So that was 9 years ago. When the first like $1,000 flagship GPU from NVIDIA was up for grabs. So now AMD is kind of doing the same thing. So in my mind, yeah, you can kind of justify $1,000 for a flagship because NVIDIA's been doing it for a very long time. But now NVIDIA has moved the bar way, way up. They've moved the goalposts for the average consumer way beyond what it used to be, starting with 30 series and continuing that trend, unfortunately, with the 40 series. So that's really unfortunate for people who like NVIDIA cards, but it is kind of the reality that you have to accept now. And other than spending an enormous amount of money on a graphics card, you can either buy last gen or just completely skip all the offerings until next year when there's cheaper, more affordable options from both Team Green and Team Red. So hope you guys found this video useful. I will probably be back with another stream tomorrow for the AMD card. Fingers crossed I can get one to showcase on the channel, because I think that I'll give them a unique perspective on the card overall, kind of like what I did with Intel Arc A770 and that launch. So I'm going to try to get one, just like I tried to get Arc, and hopefully I'm successful tomorrow. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. And once again, I thank everybody for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.